Professional coaching is a demanding career. The person sitting behind the bench is usually the first to take responsibility when anything goes wrong, whether in the form of ridicule from the public or a trip to the media hot room. Different coaches approach it in a variety of ways. You've got your likable coaches who network with the media and are well liked for their affable demeanors. Then there are the no-nonsense coaches, who aren't hesitant to beat up on their players if they don't perform up to par. Finally, some coaches are just bat crap crazy and could care less about respecting their teammates or cooperating with the media. So brace yourselves for a roller coaster of suspense as we reveal the top 10 most hated NHL coaches the NHL has ever seen. Let's get started. With number 10, we've got Randy Carlyle. Randy Carlyle has had a lot of success as a head coach, including winning the Stanley Cup with the Anaheim Ducks. However, a deeper examination of the data reveals a head coach who has benefited greatly from luck. During his stint with the Toronto Maple Leafs, which thankfully ended in January 2015, he captained some of the worst puck possession teams in the history of the National Hockey League. Carlyle reprimanded his squad for not providing appropriate defensive coverage, as the club relied on outstanding goaltending and substantial shooting percentages that could not be maintained to win games. Throughout his career, he had run-ins with players like Ryan Getzlaf, Joffrey Lupul, Jake Gardiner, and Nazem Kadri. Number 9. Mike Milbury. It's possible to make the case that Mike Milbury, a controversial coach, player, and general manager, should be on all three of these lists. As a player, he became famous for hitting a spectator in the head with the heel of his shoe in retaliation for the aggressor slashing one of his teammates with a rolled-up pamphlet. He was the general manager when the team traded Olli Jokinen and Roberto Luongo for Mark Parrish and Oleg Vasha, and if that wasn't terrible enough, he signed Alexei Yashin to a contract for $87.5 million for 10 years. His record as a coach between the Boston Bruins and the New York Islanders was 146, 160, 45, which is symptomatic of his outmoded thinking and overall substandard coaching ability. Number 8. Marc Crawford. During his time as head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, Marc Crawford gained notoriety for allegedly giving the order to his players to get revenge on Steve Moore for a hit that had been ruled to be legal and had been delivered on Marcus Naslund. It is essential to highlight that both Crawford and the Canucks denied the charges and that eventually a settlement was made between the two teams. However, when it came time to deliver the hit on Naslund, Todd Bertuzzi smacked Moore in the side of the head before falling on top of him, and other players piled on top of them both. This led to a concussion and an injury that ended the athlete's career, including 3 cracked vertebrae in the neck. In addition, Crawford tended to treat Dan Cloutier as a starter, even though the Canucks goalkeeper had a below-average save percentage. Number 7. Ron Wilson. Ron Wilson has coached several athletes throughout his career, and their relationships with him sometimes became contentious. He started out by harshly condemning Patrick Marleau for his dismal efforts throughout the game. Tensions rose due to the shift in the media's attention on the relationship between the two parties, ultimately leading to Wilson being fired in 2008 before he joined the Toronto Maple Leafs. Wilson was ultimately fired from his position as the head coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs because of the poor goaltending on his team. Even though his teams had above-average puck possession, after evading questions from the media for years after he was fired, Wilson abruptly went on the radio to criticize Phil Kessel and the other leading players of the Leafs for being untrustworthy. In addition, he provided some praise, but stated that it reflected his straightforward personality well. Number 6. Patrick Roy. One of the greatest goaltenders of all time, laid the framework for a difficult coaching career when he provided a clear signal to his son, goalkeeper Jonathan Roy, to engage the opposing goalie in a fight that culminated in a 10-player melee. The confrontation between the two goaltenders resulted in that 10-player brawl, and after being given the position of head coach of the Colorado Avalanche, Roy completely lost his composure during his very first game in charge due to a questionable play. He was fined $10,000 for his profanity-laced rant, glass pushing, and finger-pointing behavior during his team's 6-1 victory over the Anaheim Ducks. As a player, he was involved in a controversy when he left the Montreal Canadiens after being left in goal for 9 goals before finally being taken out of the game. Number 5. Craig Mactavish. We take it that he is the head coach, but is he accountable for everything that happens? Is he taking charge of the team? Nobody's aware of it anymore. The period that Craig Mactavish has spent as the head coach of the Edmonton Oilers has been filled with excitement, but questionable decisions and a striking lack of achievement had also marred it. Mactavish has transitioned from head coach to general manager, sacked Dallas Eakins as his most recent coach, and is now back to coaching, all within the span of less than 5 years. If not that, then what else could possibly be dysfunctional? Leon Draisaitl, who the Oilers kept on the roster even though he was 19 years old before deciding to send him back to junior for the World Junior Championship, thus ensuring he would not be eligible to compete, was dissatisfied with his most recent blunder. At number 4, we have Barry Melrose. When Barry Melrose was the head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning, he once quipped that he hoped Tampa Bay doesn't win a game in the next year. Melrose is no longer with the Lightning. This comment may capture his experience with the squad in its entirety, because Melrose believed that the players weren't ready for the NHL. He played superstar Steven Stamkos during his first season of professional hockey. This decision earned him a lot of criticism. According to Len Barry, a former co-owner of the Lightning, Melrose didn't want Steven on this team from day one, and it was evident how he played him. Melrose played him like he didn't want Steven on his team at all. Everyone is aware of the celebrity status that this youngster possesses, and later a verbal conflict broke out between Melrose and the management, when the management claimed that Melrose wouldn't carry out his responsibilities as promised. Number 3. Mike Keenan. Mike Keenan, much like John Tortorella, tends to have short-lived tenures, regardless of whether he's coaching the team or serving in an executive capacity as the general manager. He was regularly confronted with power struggles, and he even had to go around management to convince individuals in positions of authority to recruit certain players who, in his view, would boost the team's chances of being successful in the postseason. Iron Mike was one of the most successful coaches in the history of the National Hockey League. Although he had a fiery disposition, after chasing a referee off the ice following a defeat in Game 6 and overtime in the championship series of the previous season, which he also won, his assistant coach had to physically restrain the official before he could be removed from the ice. At number 2, we have George Punch Imlach. The relationship between Imlach and Daryl Sittler was strained. Imlach became a member of the management team that Harold Ballard had assembled, and he immediately made an impression by imposing stringent norms and criteria about attitude and attire. He harbored resentment towards Sittler's authority as a player, and made several efforts to undermine him. The competition between Imlach and the team's captain was driven even further by the fact that he and Ballard would transfer players to alter the makeup of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Sittler removed the C off his jersey as a gesture of defiance against Imlach, who had a history of heart problems during his tumultuous career. However, due to health concerns, Sittler had to reinstall the C on his shirt after Imlach withdrew from the competition. To reduce Sittler's impact on the squad, he returned in the early 1980s and kept rotating the players in the team's inner circle. And finally, at number 1, we have John Tortorella. The man constantly seems to attract attention, but it is typically fleeting and maybe even predictable since it only lasts for a short period. After a brawl broke out between two teams on the ice, he was stopped as he tried to enter the locker room of the Calgary Flames. The incident resulted in the veteran head coach being suspended for 15 days. When Torts was the head coach of the New York Rangers, he once again butted heads with Larry Brooks. After becoming frustrated with the reporter's silence, Torts yelled at him to get the out of here. Now, it's possible that we'll come across him behind the bench once more at some time. You may be sure that obscene language and rants are coming up if we do. So, who is your best coach in the NHL, and who annoys you the most? Please let us know in the comment section. Also, be sure to subscribe and leave the notification bell turned on. Alright guys, that's all we've got, so keep your sticks in the ice and we'll see you in the next video.